Hi, I'm Chris Foley. I'm the Assistant Vice President and Director for Online Education. I'm here to talk to you a little bit today about seamless student services and our collaborative approach to supporting online students here at Indiana University. And I have the pleasure of having with me Mitchell Farmer.
Hi, I'm Mitchell Farmer. I'm the Assistant Director for the Campus Partners Program with the Office of Online Education.
Thanks for being here today.
Thank you.
So, without further ado, let me just jump in there and start talking a little bit about our approach towards online education at Indiana University. So a little bit about the role of the Office of Online Education. It's a little different than what we call IU Online, which is really more of a brand and a network. But the Office of Online Education is really an organizational structure with staff and people like myself and Mitchell who help the university accomplish its goals with regard to online programs and classes. So an overview is that we really are focusing on providing the leadership, management, and coordination of online education across 7 campuses. That means that we're serving about 7,700 students who are in 100% online schedules. This means that they aren't necessarily in an online program, but they are taking all of their classes online. We serve 7 unique campuses, as I stated before, and you can see them outlined here on the state of Indiana. And you can see that their participation is not necessarily uniform across. We have some campuses which have a lot of students involved in online education and some who have a relatively small population. In addition to that, we support over 100 online programs. That includes undergraduate and graduate degrees and certificates. If you are interested in the top programs that we have here in Indiana University's IU Online portfolio, we really have a broad range. Here are the top 9, as I stated before, but we actually have over 110. But you can see that that ranges anywhere from management and MBA program to general studies all the way down to library science and data science, psychology and mathematics. If you look at where they're coming from, a lot of people think that all of our students come from Indiana, which the majority of them do, about 60%, but that leaves about 40% who come from outside of the state, and you can see the top senders here. So now that we've talked a little bit about what the students look like, let's talk a little bit about what OOE does for online education here at Indiana University. We have 4 primary responsibilities. The first is compliance, and that means that we're trying to meet the needs or meet the requirements of state and federal regulations as well as those of our accreditation agencies. We also help and assist in the academic development of programs. So that means that we try to work with the campuses to ensure that we don't have duplication of online programs across multiple campuses, and that we also create programs that can be shared across campuses so that even though students can enroll in them from multiple campuses, they can share coursework and work together as a team to meet the needs of those students. The third responsibility is delivering seamless student services and student support, which is what we're here to talk about today, so I'll leave that one alone for now. But the final area that we focus on is marketing and recruitment, which we certainly want to grow the awareness of online education that Indiana University offers, not just within the state, but in the surrounding states, and we want to become a top national provider of online education. That's one of the goals that we specifically try to accomplish here in OOE. So let me talk a little bit about how we got to where we are with selecting a model for delivering student services. And when we were looking at our options, we really saw 3 different options. We could either have a completely decentralized approach to online education and delivering the services, which means that we would have 7 different forms of support, or we would have a real haphazard delivery of those. It would really be a chaotic situation, and one that we feel that students would get stuck in the middle of and oftentimes have to try to figure out how to solve their own problems. Instead, we thought that that was not necessarily the best way to go, because we certainly thought that we needed to have better support for our students than just inconsistent and, in some cases, not very well delivered services. The second type that we could go with would be centralization. We could simply hire all of our orientation folks and all of our advisors and all of our coaches and mentors and all of our career specialists, and we could put them in one building in one geographic location, and all students would be admitted, their financial aid would be packaged, they'd register through one particular office, and then we would manage them out of that one building. We felt like that would be a duplication of effort and also one that would be very logistically difficult to accomplish here at IU, simply because we are, all of our campuses are so distinctly independent in many ways in delivering student services. So we really needed to avoid the centralized approach if we could. The final one is a collaborative approach, which is where we look to find partners out there in those campus offices who are interested and willing and capable of helping to expand the services they provide for their own students and provide those services across the university. The other thing is that they try to identify inconsistencies in policies and procedures that would be difficult for students to navigate, because we know that the student of the 21st century, when they come to Indiana University for an online education, they are going to have to take courses across multiple campuses. And so they are going to encounter differences in policies and procedures. And so we needed to make sure that if there was a collaborative approach, we thought that these campus resources would be best able to help us navigate those and ensure that we are not taking a policy or procedure and trying to enforce it on a campus, but instead have campuses identify amongst themselves how best to solve their how best to solve the issues around providing student services. It was a collaborative approach that we eventually chose and started implementing in 2015. So when we talk about what this means, to get into this a little bit more, we really are talking about providing wraparound services to complement and enhance the services already provided by campuses. All of our campuses already have financial aid offices, they already have admissions offices, they already have Office of Orientation, they all do career advising. So it would be best if we didn't try to duplicate that, but instead try to help them understand how they could extend those services, and if they needed help, for us to be able to step out there and provide that help to meet the needs of their online students. Second one was to ensure the quality of those services to meet university and student expectations, as well as even regulatory requirements. So we really had to take some time to make sure that we weren't trying to deliver just what was the bare bones minimum requirement for services for students, but we really needed to meet the expectations of students and also the university as a whole. We needed to meet those expectations in our student services, and this process would allow us to do that. We also could identify and resolve incompatibilities that were found across the campuses in their policies and procedures. So sometimes, even though we are all one university, sometimes our policies and procedures aren't necessarily all on the same page. They've been developed that way for very good reasons oftentimes, to meet the needs of their local constituencies. But now we're talking about meeting the needs of students across the entire United States in many cases. That we have to provide continuity and reliable levels of service across all of that. And where they're incompatible, we needed to resolve that. And then we finally needed to close gaps. There were areas that we knew students just weren't going to get services from those face-to-face offices. For instance, none of our admissions offices are generally open at midnight. Yet when an online student comes to us, they could be coming to us from 12 time zones away. We thought it would be better for us if we could find a way to deliver 24/7 service so that we could meet the students where they are and not expect them to suddenly act like they're living in Indiana in order to pursue an online education from IU. So in our first go around, when we first started launching these requests for seamless student services, which Mitchell will outline a little bit more later on, we identified these areas. So recruitment and admissions, financial literacy, financial aid, and bursar planning and things like that are all in that area. Orientation and onboarding, success coaching, student life, support services in general. So this would be just helping faculty serve online students and be prepared to serve online students. Academic support, math and writing support services, student conduct, internship and co-op management, and then career services. All these things we identified through talking with faculty, talking with some students, talking with staff around the university, where we thought there was either a gap or a need to provide more consistency for online students specifically. So we identified these areas, and then we went through a process, a request for partnerships to determine who would be the best partner from the campuses to help us meet these and deliver these services. So with that, let me hand it over to Mitchell so that he can talk a little bit more about the specifics of these partnerships.
Thank you, Chris. I'm going to walk through now the process for our RFP, which in our case doesn't stand for proposal, it stands for partnership, and go through kind of the steps that we took as an office to reach out to the campuses. As Chris was discussing, we serve 7 different campuses, but reaching out to them to find out and identify what things they thought they could provide at scale for online students. So a request for partnership was sent out to each campus in early October of 2015 with a quick turnaround on responses, but I want to make it clear that the responses were really a vision statement. We weren't talking about an NSF style proposal. We were looking for a vision for the service, a statement of the resources and services that would be leveraged to deliver, and then evidence that it could be delivered efficiently, more efficiently than we could deliver on our own if we had centralized. As part of the RFP process, we outlined some kind of guiding principles for the partnerships. And one of the most important was equitable services to and across all IU campuses. The goal here was to take what an individual campus was doing really well, scale that up so that all campuses could benefit and all students could benefit regardless of the campus of enrollment or the campus of admission. There was a commitment to best-in-class services, and I think Chris can cover this a little bit more. But really, when we look at what we want to provide in the online space, we are benchmarking against the traditional higher ed experience, but we're also competing against online services like Netflix, Amazon, YouTube, all of these other services. And so that's really been the model as we think about moving ahead into that 21st century education idea that Chris mentioned earlier, is looking at best-in-class service that's efficient and leverages technology in smart ways. And then finally, we really wanted to have brief timelines because we have students enrolled in classes now, and we have students that are facing those gaps in services that we are hoping to address.
And if I can just say a little bit about sort of the proposal process as a whole, they were really meant to be the start of a conversation, not the delivery of a package that would just be delivered or implemented as is. We really wanted to identify the partners, but then once the partners were identified, we wanted to spend time sitting down and refining that proposal and making sure that we were on the same page so that we could come up again with that collaborative approach that isn't just one campus's vision for how to deliver the service, but really how does the university envision delivering that service for all the campuses.
Mm-hmm. And that's a perfect segue into the first bullet on this slide, which was to really reach down into the campuses and find the level of expertise in these different areas and start that conversation. So it's not just the things that we think we know, but we can learn from the partners and from the folks that submitted proposals. Another goal was to reinforce and maximize the impact of services that are already being provided by the campuses. And as much as possible, we want to inform and potentially improve services both for online students and, if at all possible, on-campus students. So we're really looking for efficiencies that can serve multiple different populations. And then finally, as always is important, we looked to make sure that we could measure. We wanted to understand what impact these partnerships had on student retention, enrollment, performance, a wide different array of indicators, and I'll talk about those in greater detail with each partnership.
And if I can say just a little bit about that measurement aspect, we understand that these dollars that fund these services are coming from students and they expect strong outcomes, and that's what our campuses and faculty also expect. And so it's those key performance indicators and understanding that whatever money that we're spending on these services, they need to be well spent. They aren't an unlimited source, and we need to make sure we're deploying them in the best way possible. So that was one of the key reasons and key emphases we had on not just creating the key performance indicators, but our method of implementation was really meant to foster those services that would have the biggest impact on student success.
So now I'll go into an overview of the partner services as they've been delivered in response to the initial RFP. So here, as Chris mentioned, the goal was to provide wraparound students, whether we had a student that was taking a traditional pathway through their online education or a less traditional pathway. And out of that first round of requests for partnerships, we had 7 of the 12 filled, and one service actually had multiple proposals, which the campuses are now partnering to deliver that partnership collaboratively.
It was a relatively friendly process.
Mm-hmm.
There was, aside from that one service, which was success coaching, there was everybody put in proposals for separate services, and They were all quality proposals, and we were really pleased to have them.
Yeah. So I'm going to walk through each one of these partnerships quickly. And it's important to remember again that these are not replacement services. These are enhancements to the services that are already there. And we're really trying to take the best practices from our campuses and from our campus staff and bring those to bear for online students. And so IU Kokomo has partnered with us to provide services for recruitment and admissions with the goal of supporting and growing enrollment in all of the online programs across the IU system. So they're not serving just Kokomo, they're serving every campus. And the goal is to really streamline as much as possible and guide students through an application process that can be daunting, especially if you're returning after a gap in your education or you're a non-traditional student. So you can look at the key performance indicators here. And all of these key performance indicators are rooted in the best practices for measurement within their particular area. So we really looked at what is campus already measuring, what's applicable to the partnerships, and then what do the partners themselves think they need to hold themselves accountable to accomplish.
And I should say, I know we note on this slide that we have an emphasis on undergraduate enrollment. I wanted to explain that just a little bit. The reason why is, one, there's a logistical issue. Graduate admissions is a very decentralized process at Indiana University, not just across the university, but even within the campuses themselves. And so that, since it is very much already housed within very disparate structures, it's going to take us longer to get to support graduate enrollment as much as we can at the undergraduate side. The other thing that I would say is that a lot of the graduate programs already have a pretty significant amount of support, because that's how graduate programs are fairly self-contained. And so that in order to support them from a recruitment and admissions perspective, it would require a lot more specialization that we would slow us down if we focused on them right from the get-go. So it's not that we're going to be ignoring the graduates. We are certainly helping several of the programs as they see we can step in and help them. But the real emphasis is going to be on the undergraduates, because that's where our quick wins can be.
Mm-hmm. And I can give an example too of how the work we're doing for undergraduate recruitment and enrollment can be scaled to support graduate programs. And I would just point to Salesforce and the implementation of Salesforce and leveraging Marketing Cloud for automated prospect journeys. That's something that we're doing at the undergraduate level, but we would be very happy to support graduate programs in doing as well.
And actually, we've already had one graduate program adopt that.
Financial literacy is in partnership with IUPUI, and we all kind of know intuitively that some of the big questions students have when they start to think about going to school, particularly online, is can I actually do it, and what is it like, and then how do I pay for it? So the goal of the financial literacy partnership is really to build a network of services, experts, and tools for prospective, and then really for admitted students as well, to better understand kind of what they're getting themselves into when they take on the load of paying for school. And so part of this partnership has been working collaboratively with the various campus financial aid offices, the Bursar's offices, to start to understand the cost of attendance for online programs, figuring out ways to present that information to students, and then also coming up with appropriate resources to help them do financial planning over the long run while they're a student. One of the big things that we're trying to accomplish in this partnership is to increase the number of on-time FAFSA filers, which is really important as part of the admissions process and one of those early first steps that a prospective student can take. And so we've incorporated that into our prospective student messaging. But here's you can see here the key performance indicators as well. Average debt at graduation is another important area that we're working on and trying to bring those top line numbers down for all students. Orientation and onboarding. This one's really exciting because we've made some really quick and early innovations in this space. So one of the gaps that we identified is that students who are coming to a residential program have a fairly kind of traditional process to get oriented. Particularly here on the Bloomington campus, freshmen show up, they spend a couple days in the dorms, they have campus tours, they go see the rec center. But when you're an online student who maybe has made the choice that you never want to step foot on a physical campus of Indiana University, or you can't step foot on a physical campus because you live overseas or even just far away in the United States, that onboarding experience can feel a little bit more fragmented. So what we really wanted to do in partnership with the campuses is look at what orientation processes they're already using, figuring out which ones of those could be adapted to online students, and then specialize some of the areas for online student services, and then build a electronic orientation, a digital orientation for students to experience within Canvas. And so we were able to put that together really in fairly short order, and it rolled out a pilot in fall of 2016 and then expanded that pilot program in spring of 2017 and actually had over 400 students enrolled in the orientation for the first time in spring. Key performance indicators here, we're looking at student usage of the orientation modules, which we can pull from Canvas, but we're also looking at some kind of qualitative measures of student satisfaction, seeing what things we presented that were useful, what things might not be useful, and then because of a process of continual evaluation and improvement, we want to know a couple semesters down the road what would have been helpful to you coming back to IU or starting at IU for the first time. And then the final thing that we want to look at over the long run is what happens to those students that participate in an orientation as they progress through their academic pathway. And we're hoping to see positive impacts on retention and persistence and graduation rates as a result.
And this has been a fairly interesting one because this was a partnership that we kind of put together with firm expectations of what the outcome should be. But yet they surprised us because one of the things about having an online digital orientation that students have access to in Canvas is they can go back to it and refer to parts of it. So unlike a face-to-face orientation program where you take notes and then you walk away oftentimes, this one, the students are continually going back and finding out, reviewing parts of the orientation. So there's been some surprising outcomes that we think are really positive from these sorts of partnerships as well.
Yeah, and with that in mind, as we look forward to version 2.0 and 3.0, even in our planning, we're looking at ways to really establish this as a reach-back resource for students so that they have a place to come back that's got centralized information in different areas. I would also add that this is another place where we're able to share the work that we're doing with individual schools, and departments are able to borrow modules from our orientation and use it for their own purposes. And we've actually partnered with at least a couple of graduate programs as well to help support their orientation efforts. Success coaching is being offered in partnership with IU East, and sometimes there can be confusion about what is a success coach versus an advisor versus a faculty mentor. So I'm going to pose this question to Chris to kind of give us a better idea of what it is that a coach does.
So when we think about the two different professionals here, the success coach and the advisor, it's probably best to think of the advisor in the traditional role of providing academic advising on mapping out a pathway towards the degree. They do much more than that, so please don't take offense by me being fairly reductive in that definition. But what a success coach will do is, in partnership to that, really focus on providing the touch base, the proactive weekly, maybe daily, definitely monthly interactions with the students. Because remember, online students don't have casual interactions outside of the classroom experience for the most part. They don't walk into the dining facility. They don't live in a residence hall. They don't casually walk to the bookstore or take advantage of intramural sports. So there really is this lack of extracurricular or co-curricular activity. And for us, the success coach is going to be building a shell around the academic support that the advisor and the faculty provide, but do it on a very proactive way, and also make sure that it's almost a concierge kind of service. That they won't necessarily be solving every problem that the student has, but they'll be the person that the student can turn to in order to facilitate finding a solution. So that's sort of what we think success coaching is going to look like within Indiana University.
Thank you, Chris. And actually, I need to issue a correction. This is the partnership that's being offered by two campuses working together. It's IUPUI and IU East are providing success coaching. And both of those campuses have previous experience in working in this space, particularly at IU East, which brought success coaching, I believe, first to the university system, and then IUPUI through its degree completion office. And as Chris mentioned, the success coach is really there to be a point of contact and a problem solver for students. And so one of the goals that we hope comes out of the success coach model is that we can lift some of the burden off of advisors and faculty for some basic questions. And then when we do get into a situation where we need specialized support, that's where we can make the referrals. So key performance indicators for success coaching. Utilization, again, is a big one. because it's a relatively new service that we need to do some education around. We're going to look at what types of inquiries students are sending to their success coach and trying to figure out how we can proactively build resources around those. And then again, looking at hopefully positive indicators of success with retention and graduation rates.
Excellent.
Math and writing support is being offered from IU East, leveraging their on-campus centers, both of which had already started to move into online delivery. But really the goal here for both math and for writing is to help the students build confidence in these areas. It can be daunting in a residential setting to go into a large math class. It can be especially daunting in an online setting where you may not have that kind of casual interaction with your classmates or your faculty member. And so the goal here is through a synchronous platform, students are able to log in, ask for help from a peer tutor, and then get specific services in writing and in math. So for writing, students can submit up to 10 pages a day for consultation. This is not just straight copy editing. This is not how do I frame my question better, but really helping the student work through to improve the quality of their writing. And they can do everything from comma splices to revisions for better grades. For math, it's very much the same way that students actually are required to upload the work that they've already done towards solving their problem, as well as the problem itself. And then a math consultant will come in and guide them through the problem. It is not a solution service. It is another tool, another help. And these are asynchronous services, which means that students can access them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, with the exception of campus holidays. And we're also in partnership with IUE starting to explore some limited live options through live sessions, synchronous sessions, through the Math Center in particular. So key performance indicators here. Again, utilization is always going to be our big one, so that we can see how many students we're serving and then revise and adjust if we find out that our utilizations are low or high. Performance within the relevant coursework. So we really, particularly with math, we target courses at Calc 1 and lower. So we have a very narrow set of courses that we can focus on. And over time, the goal is to work more collaboratively with those faculty members and figure out ways to really embed the idea of these math and writing supports into the courses. Student satisfaction is always a big one. As we mentioned, we benchmark now. We hold ourselves accountable to delivering services similar to Amazon and iTunes, and they have easy feedback mechanisms, so we want to make sure that students are satisfied with the service. And then we also want to make sure that the campuses are satisfied, and I think this is a big one because it crosses over into the classroom. We need to make sure that it's working for faculty, it's working for the academic units, and that we're delivering a service that makes a positive impact. Career services, so this is part of that wraparound from start to finish. The idea here is to provide online students with similar access to career opportunities and tools and guidance on how to have a successful job search. Because a lot of our students may be continuing in their current profession, or they may be going to school online in order to change sectors or change careers. So we want to make sure that we have resources available there. And this is being offered in partnership with IUPUI. So kind of the key thing I would point out about the performance indicators is that we're using national standards here from the National Association of Colleges and Employers to really understand the outcomes. We also want to work with the employers and the schools to collect their metrics and make sure that when we're providing services to a student in a particular program, we're getting them into the right career field. With all those partnerships outlined, we know that there are still some gaps that we're going to address. So we obviously have the 5 remaining initial service areas that we need to fill, but we also recognize other areas that we need to offer support. And this is just a quick list. We recognize some gaps with military-connected student support services, disability support services, services from students of diverse backgrounds, services to our alumni. These are areas that we're always looking at and revising, and we actually are always open to suggestions. So as we find from working with the campus partners themselves or with other faculty or even campus leadership that there's a gap, we're always kind of looking at how we can fill that with a partnership model. We're going to walk through the process of establishing the partnerships, and this is kind of the administrative side of the work that we're doing. So there are 4 elements of each partnership. There's a memorandum of agreement between the Office of Online Education and the campus that's delivering the service. We have a budget for the service per year. Each project has a designated project lead, and then as you've seen, we define key metrics for each partnership.
And if I can say something just briefly about the budget. The idea for the budget is that it will be funded through the Office of Online Education. So even though we call these partnerships, financially, these should not be burdens to the individual campuses. We're not asking for the campuses to cost share too much. In some cases, they provide us with space and technical support and things along those lines. But this is not a scenario where we are going out to the campuses saying, can you fund 25%? Can you fund 50%? Instead, we are trying to deliver all these services through the distance education fee, which was implemented back in 2015.
Thanks, Chris. So for the MOAs, we have a standard format and template for all of the partnerships. This is done in transparency, or for the purposes of transparency and also to improve our workflow. But if any campus were to request the MOA for another service, it would look very similar to the one that they had, and there would be no surprises. The initial round of MOAs had durations of up to 18 months, but we anticipate going forward that will, depending on what campuses are providing the services and how they'd like to structure them, we're looking at 12 months or 24-month MOAs going forward. But the MOA itself outlines the contributions that our office will make, both in terms of financial resources, but also staff support and guidance, the partner contribution, the budget, and the key metrics. The budget, as Chris mentioned, is supported by the $30 per credit hour distance education fee that comes to the Office of Online Education. And going back to those core principles for the partnerships, the partners really are expected to provide the service at a lower cost than if we were to provide it directly ourselves. And that's proven to be true across the partnerships. And I think that's a pretty key feature. Major expenditure categories are probably predictable if you've worked in budgets before: personnel, software, technology, and equipment. And we make large investments in the software and technology because, as we mentioned earlier, we want to scale these services to a lot of students and a lot of different geographies, but we also want to make sure that they are smart, cutting edge, and intuitive to use. The partnership lead can take a couple different forms, and different campuses have used different things. Whatever works best for their HR models works best for us. And so you can see we've had staff buyouts, overload work, reclassifications, and even a request for additional staffing, all of which has been supported within the budgets and the MOAs. The key metrics, as I mentioned before, are tied to best practices and university standards within each service area. And the goal is for this initial round of partnerships is to use year one as a benchmark and to see as a baseline for the service provision where we start. And then in future years, we can use that to determine success, but also new areas for growth and expanded effort. The onboarding process, given that our campus partners are all around the state of Indiana, we've put a lot of effort into trying to make sure that communication is as easy as possible between our office and the partners. So in early October of 2016, we held a partner summit that brought all OOE staff and all of the partnership staff together into a single room at IUPUI for a day-long workshop. We had the great benefit of having senior university leadership at the event to kind of frame the work that we were doing and provide support, which was really good for getting everybody kind of on the same page and getting the conversation started. Each partnership kind of went round robin around the room and explained their area of service. And one of the really great unexpected outcomes was immediate cross-partnership collaboration. And so the individual partners knew their areas well enough to be able to say, I can offer support to you here. And that was really great, and something that probably wouldn't have been as easy to achieve if we were doing it all over email.
A good example of that was immediately you had admissions, financial aid, orientation, and success coaching pretty much all stepping to the plate to talk about how they could create a holistic team approach to getting a student all the way from the point of prospect and inquiry all the way into enrolled and well into classes, which was fantastic to watch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. From that summit, we started a road mapping process, and the goal here was to develop a consistent template, again, across the partnerships, where we were collecting standardized information so that we could share our progress and the progress of the partnerships with the wider university community. So in those roadmaps, we looked at scope, timeline, short-term gains and deliverables, long-term gains, and then a communication plan. And that last piece is really important because we want to make sure, as I've said several times, that we're transparent about the work that's being done and make sure that everyone knows that we're open to suggestions and to ways to improve the work that we're doing.
one of the challenges of our model here at Indiana University is if we had everybody in the same location, if we had centralized, faculty, students, courses, programs, staff, everywhere, communication would be fairly easy because all of that is contained within the same organization. We chose explicitly not to do that because we felt like it was a better model if we really had that collaborative approach. But it also means that we have to, the communication of what we're doing and the things that we offer students does provide a challenge because we're working with faculty and staff distributed, not just in the partnerships and not just in OOE, but actually the fact we have 2,000 courses in, we have 2,000 online courses, 100 to 110 programs now. Trying to get everybody aware of what's going on is a significant challenge. So having the communication plan mapped out as part of the road mapping was and continues to be an essential part of this.
And I would just put in a plug that these roadmaps are now publicly available on the Teaching Online website, and they'll be continually updated, both as new partnerships are added, but also as new deliverables and achievements have been reached.
Great.
So this is just an overview of kind of the communication schedule that we've set up with the partners. I'm pretty much in constant contact with the partners. I have weekly standing meetings with all of the partnership leads and managers and support staff. Basically anybody that's involved on the campus is welcome to dial in. We have a monthly all partners video conference, which did begin in 2017. It's not beginning, it has. And we also plan to hold a partner summit each semester to reconnect with the partners and the work that they're doing as a collective group, and also to onboard new partners. As part of the cross-functional work that we do with the partnership model, and Chris outlined earlier the 4 different areas that our office supports, one of which is marketing and recruiting, we do have a 24-hour contact center where students, prospective students and current students can call with their problems and concerns. And one of the things that we've done to bridge the partnership model and the marketing and recruitment side is to connect all the partners with that contact center so that there's a good exchange of information about what the partnerships are doing and how they can help provide customer service to students.
So in conclusion, we really hope that this has provided a fairly easy and brief overview of the partnership model we've established to support student services here at Indiana University and online education. So if you have any questions, which we always welcome them, here is our contact information, myself and Mitchell, as well as one of our colleagues, Ilona Haidu, who's an associate director and Mitchell's direct supervisor. You're welcome to contact any one of us with any questions you might have. And in the meantime, you're certainly welcome to check out our websites, and we welcome any comments you have. Thank you very much and have a great day.